What's up, Internet? And welcome back to the Owl's Nest, where every week we cover everything Overwatch. Make sure you're subscribing and hitting the bell to get all the notifications when we go live, and make sure you leave a thumbs up if you like what we're doing here. So ZP, my man, we're back at it again, and it's been a crazy week. I definitely want to talk, though, about London and Boston, which is a run back that we had from the last week of Stage 1, and now we're coming into it, new meta, all new changes, but I think we performed pretty well.
Houston absolutely performed very well in this first week of Stage 2, where what better way to christen a brand new week of Overwatch than to go, remember that really tough week that you ended the last stage? Why don't you do all that again? And there were concerns about Houston as they're coming in going, okay, maybe they're punching above their weight class. Are they going to still be able to do well with a little bit of Junkrat nerfing and Mercy being less viable? And the answer was yes, where Houston was able to take a 3-2 victory over London, was very close, where they were able to take control maps where London is still very much weak on, and it's proving to be more of a strength of the Outlaws as they move forward. And of course, a dominant victory over Boston, 4-0. So it was a very good week for the Outlaws with a lot to prove in terms of just setting the tone for Stage 2.
I think, though, when we go into Stage 2, we definitely need to talk about the map pool. I feel like this is a big change, and I think it's a little bit of nostalgia for guys like yourself that are OGs in the community. So I guess we have to talk a little bit about Kings Row, Hanamura, Gibraltar, and Nepal. But let's start with Kings Row first.
Well, just to begin with, to note nostalgia, it absolutely is, right? Where the map pool for Stage 2 is essentially the old beta competitive Overwatch map pool, where for people who have been following Overwatch pretty much since the beginning of time, since it's begun, it's kind of a throwback here where you look to hybrid. What you have Kings Row, Hollywood. Of course, you didn't see the Outlaws play Hollywood this week, but still, it kind of throws you back. But to your point,
yeah.
Kings Row, I will say straight out, Spree is out of jail.
Finally.
Yes. And the reason is that Kings Row is a map that is very good for Zarya, right? Where Spree is, sort of seen as more of a Zarya specialist, can play other off-tanks, but generally speaking, you'd want to play him in a situation where you're looking more at your Zarya play than anything else. So that's why you saw Spree come in here on Kings Row. And the Ryan Zarya meta actually seems pretty conducive to the Outlaws, where Spree was able to perform very well, where, not every substitution works out well in Overwatch League, but this one did put on a gem of performance on Zarya play as they got to Boston, where, for the record, I do think the Outlaws struggled a little bit against London, obviously, as they lost Kings Row there. But I think they were able to learn and adapt, so when they finally got to Boston later in the week, they're just like, okay, we're actually good at playing this now. And yeah, so a big switch up where you'll be seeing Kings Row and you'll be seeing a lot of Ryan Zarya going forward.
Cool. And what can we kind of expect when it comes to like Hanamura now and Volskaya? Like what do all these maps what are some things that we should start to expect from them now?
Well, one thing we can expect from them is that they are not Temple of Anubis. And a key part there is that these are assault maps where you can use longer range to your advantage much more readily, and we saw that on both Hanamura and Volskaya, where Linkser was running Soldier 76 pretty effectively. What I thought was very interesting is in the Boston matchup on Hanamura, and you had a little bit of this in Volskaya, but it was very pronounced in Hanamura, where the Outlaws were playing, by Hanamura standards, one of the more passive Hanamura defenses you could have, where they were holding really far back and sort of daring the offense to jump into them on first points. And what that was doing was that was giving Muma really good opportunities to cleave a significant portion of Boston as they would dive in. And it gave Linkser plenty of protection in the back to lay in damage to the opposing tank line. And it was kind of a treat to watch. And it's sort of the positioning that you couldn't really use too effectively on Temple of Anubis, where Temple of Anubis, by its nature, kind of eliminates sight lines once you start getting closer to the point.
Makes sense. Now, speaking of defense, I want to talk a little bit about Gibraltar and get some of your thoughts on that map.
Watchpoint Gibraltar, it was a dominating defense coming out from the Outlaws. And Gibraltar, again, it's sort of the theme of longer sight lines where you have more room to maneuver on Gibraltar, right? Where it's probably one of the more unique maps in the game in terms of the change-up in strategy from first point to second point to third point. But in regards to the Outlaws this week, you only saw first point. And the reason is that rather than a Soldier 76 from Linkser, which I probably would have expected, they played around Widowmaker. And it was one of the most shut-down Widow performances you could ever have, where Linkser was well protected in the back. You had Jake as a flanking option on the Genji. And it was kind of funny where you saw Linkser really open up with the Widowmaker early on, and then finally when they started giving Linkser more respect, what do you have but Jake coming in from the back? And It's interesting, too, because generally with Outlaws, I feel like in a lot of games you have the tanks that are kind of the star players, even with good DPS play. But Gibraltar was one where it felt like Linkser and Jake were both able to take over. And for Jake, kind of got to flex his muscle a little bit, not on Junkrat.
But on that Tracer, that was also really sick.
Genji.
Oh, that too. Both.
Yes.
Both were also like something to watch a little bit more of, because I think we all see the Jake Rat meme everywhere, but him actually getting out there and showing off to shoot off the guns, I'm personally super happy about it. But I guess what I also want to talk about, speaking of hit scans, right, is I want to talk about Dallas and I want to talk about AKM. Talk to me about their changes in their roster going into Stage 2.
All right, so Dallas Fuel, definitely one of the biggest stories of the week as far as Overwatch League news around the league, and it's because they had some of the most striking roster changes of any of the teams in the signing period, where they brought on AKM, of course, a legendary hitscan DPS player known for his time with Rogue, was probably one of the most notable players to be left off of an Overwatch League roster. And they signed Rascal, of course, who was with London, but London, the way they had evolved, they didn't really have as strong of a role for him, so he ends up going to Dallas in a trade where the trade was simply, please pay this player's salary. We're not going to use him. We would like to have more funds in a roster spot. But both trades worked out really well for Dallas, particularly AKM, where I personally thought going in that would be mostly Rascal, in effect, teaming up at all times, but AKM showed, again, why he is one of the best hit scan players in the game with just, I mean, amazing Soldier 76 play. Very good tracking across the board. And, okay, beating dragons right now, it's still sort of, you were able to do that last stage.
Yeah.
But they did also look very good against the Gladiators. The part that sort of makes me wonder a little bit, though, is that you think about, well, what are the other players going to do in the roster? Well, you have Time who's suddenly taking up a tank role, and then you have Seagull who's actually come out publicly now and said, look, I actually don't expect to get that much play time. I signed on here as a sub, and now Seagull is, I guess, doing the Rocky Balboa training montage for D.Va. So it's a lot of changes to Dallas Fuel, and yet they were able to pull out two wins, and it's probably the best they've looked all season long so far in OWL. So if you're a fan of Dallas or just watch their play, it was a good week for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm Outlaws till I die, but even then, I did gotta tip my hat over to AKM. But I think there's also this aspect of a lot of these folks are thinking about how they're going to be playing, what's Overwatch going to look like, especially since we just had some patch notes just drop with some changes to some characters. So there's a couple of characters on the list, right? There's Mei, you have something going on with Sombra, and there's someone else, I believe, correct?
Mei and Sombra are the two really big ones here to focus on and pay attention, where Mei is, and we'll see how it evolves, but basically right now when Mei freezes you as a character, regardless of what freeze state you're in, it wears off after 1 second. So if you're just able to stop getting frozen for 1 second, you will be able to escape and go back to your normal movement ability. That is now getting changed to 1.5 seconds, which means that Mei has more time to hit you again and keep you in that freeze state, more time to actually build up to a full freeze. What it means here is that flankers have to give Mei a little bit more respect. Whether it means we will see more Mei getting used in situations where she's not, which is most of the time, unfortunately, if you like playing Mei, if it's not like the end part of an assault anyways. We'll see. In theory, though, it does give a little bit more control to Mei. Bigger to me is Sombra, because Sombra has now totally changed playstyles, where Sombra, generally speaking right now, her big power is in her ultimate, right? Where you use health packs and you wait for ult charge to come up from grabbing health packs. And it was really key, particularly in maps like Route 66, where you would have a Sombra just use that health pack to have an EMP up every fight. Now, instead, they go, okay, wait. This is not how we intended our hacking hero to be. They've changed it up so that Sombra is now going to be more battle-focused, where her gun is going to be better. The effects of getting hacked are going to be more severe, but as a result, she's not going to get EMP charge from health packs anymore. So as a result, what they're trying to incentivize here is a Sombra that is more even keel power-wise, won't necessarily have an EMP up every fight, but will be more incentivized to kind of be this flanker behind the scenes, which they also helped by buffing Opportunist, where she just gets to see your health at all times versus when you're low.
So the big changes to what I remember is the spread on the gun is a lot less. So it's a lot more concentrated in terms of damage. And a translocator also gets an additional 5 seconds as far as the PTR shows. So that gives you a little bit of extra time to run around, get a little bit of time to get there, pick your targets, and move effectively. So I think that with all that kind of coming, we can expect that further down the line for Overwatch League. But let's talk about what we can expect next week, right? Let's talk about what we can expect going forward. So we're playing against Fusion and NYXL, correct?
The Outlaws are playing against both Fusion and NYXL, and it is sort of the salty run-back week for the Outlaws, right? Where if you think about the story of the Outlaws in Stage 1 is that they had a rough beginning. Well, their rough beginning was courtesy of the Fusion and courtesy of NYXL. Yeah. So their Week 2 in Stage 2 is the run-back of Week 1 of Stage 1. And it'll be very interesting. I think that the Philly matchup, even though I don't think anyone can take Fusion lightly, they're a team that has shown that they can sort of punch above their weight class very regularly and shock teams when you otherwise wouldn't expect it. I do think that given the fact that people have kind of gotten used to some of the things that Philly likes running, in particular, Poco bombs are not surprising people anywhere near as much when he is on Diva. I do think that Houston will have a bit of an edge heading into that matchup. So if trends continue, Houston should win that. But the thing that is totally up in the air, where you've had these three teams taking games off each other, sort of this triangle at the top, is what is going to happen when Houston goes up against NYXL in this vaunted matchup that very well could be the match for #1 in the Overwatch League standings, period.
Interesting. I feel like we're looking at these guys, and they're going to be playing a brand new Outlaws team. So I'm particularly looking forward to it, and I hope all of you guys are as well. So for you guys that are still tuning in, I appreciate you. Hit a thumbs up if you like everything that we've been doing here today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell for the notifications so you don't miss a minute when we come back at you next week.